Welcome to the Credit Union Sales and Marketing Podcast. Your hosts, Bill McKenna, Paul Robert, and special guests discuss ideas for creating alignment in your sales and marketing efforts and ways to accelerate growth. Now let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Credit Union Sales and Marketing Podcast. I'm your co-host, Bill McKenna. Paul, introduce yourself.
I'm Paul Robert. I'm Bill's lesser half when it comes to the Sales and Marketing Podcast.
Lesser
How you
half.
doing, Bill?
That sounded a little weird to me. I don't know, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it for today. It's great to be here again. And Paul, I'm looking forward to having our guest today, Legg, who's the founder and president of Thrive. Anne is obviously very well known in our industry for the work she's done with data and all sorts of good stuff. So Anne, welcome. And why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing at Thrive?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a treat. So, I'm the founder of Thrive, and what we are is we're a data education advisory. What the heck does that mean? That
Wow,
means that we
yeah.
work, I know, right? That just sounds real big. Okay, let's unpack that. What that means is, as a credit union, I have tons of gorgeous data. I have data in possibly 60 to 100 different repositories. And what I'm just trying to do with it is unlock it so that I can improve my members' lives. I just need to live our mission, right? So what we do is we help credit unions do that in two ways. We either collaborate with them and we work with them and partner with them and get in there and pull out all those gorgeous data bits. Like we identify some real quick wins, like what is going to be, where's your member spending? What are the top retailers? What's gas and groceries? Who is your top competition in revenue generating products? Like where else are your members making payments to other mortgages, credit cards, autos? We take all that and then we say, okay, let's find a data use case. But that sounds really kind of big and kludgy. So what we say is, hey, what the heck is your members' most friction doing business with you? And let's take two steps back on that. What the heck is the member really trying to do? The credit union is solving just four problems for the member. The member has a shelter problem. They either need to rent or buy. They have a transportation problem. They have a travel and play problem. That's going to be your credit card. And then they have a rainy day and retirement problem. And that's going to be your short-term and long-term deposits. So as the member is trying to get those problems resolved, the credit union is looking at the world and saying, okay, what data do I need to make sure I find out who they are? That kind of goes back to journaling, but we really have to get up front and figure out what those frictions are. We take that and then we do the last piece. And that is we say, well, there's actually two pieces, but A and B. Hey, credit union, let's figure out how, with the data you have, let's start lessening a friction so we can solve down that friction. And then the final piece is I say, all right, now let's build out that data strategy that's comprehensive and does a couple things. A, it drives a beautiful data growth engine, which is fueled by your data management, your analytics, and your data literacy. And think about how that all rolls in, and then that's going to hit a variety of different things that the credit union's looking at, right? That's our big, huge collaboration that we do with credit unions, and I can go on that, but let's also talk about the self-guided one. One of the things we realized along the journey, and by the way, I've been in this industry, this is my 33rd year, you guys.
Started when you were 12, right?
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
14. We'll run with that.
Yeah,
But
right.
in my 33 years, and I've been in the C-suite for like 17 of those, I realized one of the things that we have to do is grab onto all this gorgeous data and do cool stuff with it to improve our members' lives. But we actually need to have education on it. We need to figure out what the heck it is. So we offer the only data activation course that'll give you 7 CPE credits. We're actually completely accredited by the National Accounting Board standards. So those people that you get your CPAs, they give you the credits. But it's also fueled with this little nuggie. And I know you're like,
Yeah.
she just pulled out her book. What? Okay, hold on. Hold on. Give me 2 more seconds. This little guy, not very big, super easy, is a textbook, but I'm also an adjunct professor with the Southwest CUNA School and the Western CUNA Schools where I teach on this as well. But this is cool. This is in our museum, you guys. This is in the Credit Unions Museum and it's in its research library. So
Love it. Love it.
That's what
That's a
Thrive does.
Yeah. So, hey, and I've heard so many great things. And obviously, you and I have had some conversations in the past. Matter of fact, I think I've referred maybe a client or two your way to go
Yeah.
through some of the training and course that you've done.
Yep.
So let's break it down. Let's go right down to the ground level here for a second, and let's talk about the main goals when you talk to credit unions today, right? They're going to tell you
Yep.
there's a few things that are those main goals. Number one, they talk about deepening relationships with members, right? They want
Yep.
deeper relations. And we know the importance of doing that. I
Yep.
often say to people that you don't need more members, you need deeper relationships with the one you have. Now,
Yep.
so that's one of the goals. The second goals is getting new members in the door, right?
Yep.
Bringing onboard and creating that and
Yep.
going through the process and then good onboarding and all that. So those are some of the core goals. And we know that data, having the right data and removing the obstacles, those are going to allow that smooth transition, whether you're a non-member joining or if you're a member trying to deepen those relationships, you've got to remove those obstacles. And Paul, why don't you talk about that for a second too, because we know the data part's important. We also know that the frontline part of it's so important, how the people tie into all of this, right?
Well, and being able to use the data, and I think in how they speak to their members, and what they say exactly and how they say it and so forth. I mean, that's a critical part of this. Is that part of the data literacy that you were alluding to?
Yeah, let's kind of roll this up into kind of think of it really easily this way, right? I, as a credit union, I want to have the data to grow, become more efficient, become more intelligent, because then my people will be empowered to improve members'
Mm-hmm.
lives. So think about that throw all the way through. Growth has to do with, yes, I need to understand, who are my members? Do I see them? Do they know that I see them, right? Do I understand where else they have relationships and places? Do I understand that maybe they're super affected by what's going on in our environment right now, and how do I help them, right? So how do I find that problem? How do I get the insights, and then how do I take action on it? That's exactly what we're talking about here, because and it's got to be in obviously large strategies, but it's got to be in those really easy ways where I say,
Right.
to the point you just said about, oh my gosh, the member did this spend, and let's be clear about this, buy now, pay later. Oh my goodness. Did the member just do a buy now, pay later? That means that they just are paying off that bagel 4 times, but they digested it on Tuesday. And if that's the case, right? And you're like, oh, I don't know if that's really the best way of using it. So as a credit union, you get to go in and go, let me see who's in our buy now, pay later. Let me see if they have a financial situation. And as credit unions do so awesomely, how do I get in there and do an intervention? And what's the people, like, what are the conversations I need? What are the skills I need? All that good
Right.
stuff that goes in and says, how do I identify this target, this gorgeous member group of mine who might need help? So that's kind of pulling all the way through how the data works, from identifying the data use case, which is what's the business problem, to identifying the insights, what do I know about it, to taking the action, which is going to obviously involve a variety of different pieces of operational knowledge, and the training component as well.
One
Yeah.
of the
And
things I love about that, Bill and Ann, is it takes a strategy, a macro strategy, and it really boils it down to something micro at a micro level where you can
Yeah.
use it and make it
Yes.
live, right? Yeah.
I call it
yeah.
being nuggetable. I call it being nuggetable because that's such a technological word.
Nuggetable. Yeah. Yeah. Love
Nuggetable.
it.
Let's take what you're doing and let's turn it into nuggets and make it nuggetable.
Yeah, I
Nuggetable.
like that. I just having some nuggets when I was driving to the airport the other day. Actually, I needed lunch. And one of the things I find about, I'm going to have to admit that I got McDonald's nuggets because they're so easy to eat when you're driving. You can just
Yes.
stuff them in your mouth.
Yes.
But
Yes.
so here, so I'm with the credit union. I'm working with the credit union, a bunch of them, but one of them, I'm just going to use an example here. We did a campaign for them. They often think, oh, marketing is going to solve the problem. Let's just get more messages out. Let's just get
Right.
more frequency and we know the fact
Right.
that that is not true. So I do a campaign and I see that we get 164 people to a landing page we created.
Hmm.
And that landing page, we got about 65 people click on that. Now, this is not a huge credit. This is a $200 million credit. We got 60 some people to click on that. And then it goes into their loan app. And they
Yep.
have the worst loan app you've ever seen in your life. And so we get 3 conversions out of all of those people, there's a major problem. And
Right.
that's a simple one. Their loan application is not good. It's not easy, and no one is going to do it.
Right.
So, and that's such a basic thing. And you would think credit unions would understand they got to fix that LOS. They got to make it work. But you know what? So many of them just aren't thinking that way. They're not
Well,
realizing these obstacles they're putting in the way.
right. So let's unpack that for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about that. There are really three elements, three components, if you will, of how you use data, right? Three applications of it. You're going to either use it for products, which is going to be, like you said, identifying who's got target for that, to improve process, which you just talked about both, and to help us with our people, right? So products, process, and people. To your point, many times, and let's just take a step back to strategy. When I'm a credit union and I'm looking at what are my KPIs or even what I'm audited on, it's not the member success. It's, do I have loans? Do I have deposits? It is, am I well capitalized? None of that says member experience. So by default, credit unions measure themselves off of a metric that's not around the member. So we have to shift that and go, how do we become member centric? How do we understand that there's a member experience out there that we've got to figure out how to solve? Now, many times you're like, yes, and I'll be totally technical about this. Ready? Oh my gosh, my loan app is kludgy. And you know what? It might be, but how do you figure it out? I worked with a credit union that was 125, so we're not talking your ginormo. They realized that in that same problem, they could take and use a survey tool to do sort of, I'm not going to say like a pre-approval, but they already had the members pre-approved, but to pull them into their loan environment quickly. Then in the loan environment, then they can look through and say, we know this group, we've pre-approved them, we know they should be coming through. When they come in through, there are live wires. And we're going to assign resources to that because we don't have technology we can assign, but we can assign some resources. And then we assign our resources, our people to it. And then we say, okay, what's your follow-up? Now you get those humans that our credit union humans are amazing. And I'm sure, Paul, you can talk about that, but they're ready to help. Their whole point is to help. So they get in and they may have, and not that I'm a proponent for this, but if it's that you've got your list that you are just checking off, but you're in there to follow up. It's a matter of making sure you've got processes that can be clicked back to be measured to make sure that you've got impact along that way.
Yeah. And so there's some basic things you can do, even if you're not quite ready to make the move to, and we hear credit unions changing cores and going through this and changing their back end, their LOS. But what you're saying is there are ways you can do it that will work and to start. And Paul, what Ann just said is so true, right? Like, for instance, I know you speak with people in the back office that might be loan officers that have to follow up on things. So even by creating an opportunity or warm lead, there are ways to follow up those people, but they also have to do their job and be accountable to make those things happen.
Well, you need
Right.
structure. You need structure and you need process and discipline to do that. And well, then you have to be held accountable. I mean, that's all part of making it effective. So, yeah, I think we've all experienced as a consumer how valuable a follow up can be and how critical it can be to our loyalty, our affinity for a certain brand. Certainly in financial services, that holds true too, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. And let's go back to a couple things. First of all, our members and money, right? What a sensitive topic. And no matter where
Right.
you are with your money, it is something that's very intimate. It's going to evoke emotion. So when we come back and we do what we do in the credit union industry and we go out with love and service, then that's going to be felt, right? And there's many opportunities. I want to circle back a little bit on what Bill said, and that is you can change what you're doing with no new tech and no new talent. What you have to do though is you have to look back and go, hey, what are the areas that are most significant that we need to improve on? And that's what I usually start off with. And I'm like, okay, let's ask. what is the friction your member has doing business with you? And sometimes you'll hear it in, oh, well, they can't do this, they can't do that. Then let's identify the ones we can take care of. Let's figure out what information we can get about that, what people we can put in there. And then exactly what you said, Paul, which I think is the biggest just like the biggest breaking spot is I create a new process and then I don't make anybody accountable. I don't build
Right.
proficiencies. I don't have metrics that say what's happening and how to be successful. And I don't have, most importantly, a metric data that says I'm improving the members' lives. I'm
Right.
not walking back and being like, oh my, like my biggest beautiful thing that credit unions do is a skip.
Yeah.
Members are allowed to skip payments.
Yeah.
Large other financial institutions can't do that. That's, you guys, that's like a microloan. They have data out there that's proven that if you're skipping a loan, that particular member is going to be in a better financial situation if they're just given 60 days. They're going to be in a better financial institution, when then before they were, right? So why are we not having metrics that say, wow, we do these things and by getting the loan, we save them X amount of money? Why are we
Mhm.
not the hero that comes into it that says, I am motivated because I am here to help you, member, lessen your financial burden in the way that I can, with the tools that I can, and with the time that I can? That is the power of data. That's the power of bringing it all together.
Hey, Bill, that goes back to something we've talked about before, and that is credit unions are too humble. They do all these awesome things and like
Yes.
skip a pay, but we don't
Yes.
talk about it enough. Nobody knows it except for the handful of members that already experienced it.
Yeah, for
I,
sure.
I wanted to ask Ann about using data, much like we have just discussed, in a proactive way, not looking at how members have behaved in the past, but looking at, the anticipatory side of it. What's coming next? How can I help them prepare for that next life stage or whatever the next event would be and so forth?
Here's just a quick shout out to our sponsor, ironistic.com. Hey, in today's world, everyone knows the importance of having a great website and having an integrated and digital marketing plan. If your credit union, community bank, or any other company is looking for that help, I can highly recommend ironistic.com. Check them out.
What can you say to about data in anticipating events?
Oh my goodness, it is so chock full. Okay, it's a pretty exciting let's talk for a minute a little bit about data and how it works for just a hot minute so that everybody's kind of on the same page. So, most importantly, we think about data analytics, right? And we think about right now all of us credit unions have descriptive data that tells me everything about my current situation. And to your point, Paul, most of it's looking backwards to say, where have I
Mhm.
been? That's descriptive data. Well, if I know where I am today, then I can do what? I can predict. This is where I can start thinking about what you need. I can predict if you're going to need a loan. I can predict that you've got 6 payments left on your auto loan and you're already shopping for the next one. I can predict that your triggers, right? You're doing this, this, and this means you're going to have that.
Right.
If I can predict, I'm getting to the point that you talked about, which is prescribe. And what I want is I want my credit union to say to me, hey, Ann, guess what? You're an empty nester. And I'm going to be like, whoop,
Right.
whoop. And they're going to say, you know what? You got to dump that beautiful mommy van you've had forever. And what you've always wanted, Ann, because I've had that thing, it's about to die. What you've always wanted, Ann, is the Batmobile. And I'll be like, yes, I want the Batmobile. Now, how do they know about the Batmobile? Because they're watching my socials and they see that's what I've been checking out. So what they say to me next is they say, look, you qualify for a pre-used Batmobile from a gentleman in Gotham if you just swipe. And I say yes. And they're like, great. We see two that we can get our hands on. May we drive one to your house? And if you test drive it, then we will take said lovely mommy van away, and you can be you can be in this gorgeously previously owned, new to you Batmobile. That's what
Mhm.
data can do. That's what prescription gets us because I can prescribe what you need next. I have to have a lot of data and I need to have models to do that, but that's where we are going, and you're already seeing that today.
Love that, and I love the power in that. And Bill, that's
And
marketing and sales right there, isn't it? I mean, that's
it,
you
it
market to
is.
those, you market to that anticipation, and then your people deliver on it. And
Or
Yes.
you're gonna pull up the Batmobile, aren't you? Oh no, you got a different model there.
or see, I might not want a Batmobile, but I'm an old guy who wants a '67 GTO.
Yeah, you
And
do,
did you
with a
did you
gorgeous
and
8 in
did you
it.
know my credit union does classic car loans?
Do they
So
really? Oh, nice.
they no, actually
Yes,
they do.
yes.
When I was American Heritage Credit Union, I happened to know that the CEO there, he actually likes classic cars. They built a category for classic car loans because they know that people want to buy these $70,000
Yes.
cars.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
and
And
so that's my Batmobile, just saying. And I love the terminology of the Batmobile because I get it.
Yeah.
People like to drive cars that are recognizable.
I
Not everybody cares about that, but
I
you don't
like the
have one, Paul?
reference. I like the reference to mommy van. Have the words "I don't want to give up my mommy van" ever been uttered? I don't think so. So,
You know what?
love
It
that.
is by no, it is by those people who are living out of that thing and like driving those kids around because man, that
Well,
thing is
yeah,
a
but
workhorse. It doesn't
once the
die.
kids are grown up and they've moved on, that's when you get rid of
No,
the mommy van, right?
no.
So
Then you
Yeah.
so
then you're like, I'm good.
Yeah.
So, Anne, let's talk a little bit more about. I mentioned that I remember referring a client to you who went through a little. You have a little a school or a workshop or
Yep.
something
Yep.
you do. Let's talk about that for a second because I think that's
Yep.
fascinating. Because when I talk to a lot of credit unions, I may talk about the fact that they don't have a CRM or they're not able to create automated marketing and they're not able to mine data. They're not able to get appended data. They don't
Yep.
have the ability. So they go like, oh, well, where do we start? Like what, and I,
Right.
so what is the journey like? Tell me about what you do and
Yep.
how they understand that journey. Because before that, if they don't start there, they're not going to really know where their early wins are.
100%. So to be proficient in data, right? To be able to understand what to do with it, I have to understand what is the data strategy and what is the data vision. I have to understand a member-centric data use case. That's our friction. I have to figure out a little bit about where my maturity is. So data maturity is going to be the ability of which your credit union consumes data right now. So I have to understand like where am I? There's 4 phases. It's basically babies, little kids, teenagers, and adults. Okay, those are my words, but you understand. So we have to understand maturity and know where I am, right? Because then that helps me understand my literacy, right? How literate am I? What data am I getting to? What am I using it for? As I said, most credit unions are being very descriptive about it, pulling in that gorgeous description. But there's a lot more in there that I'm using. And then what do I need to do with all that? I need to figure out how I'm going to build up that data growth engine. So that's where I've got to put together just a one page data strategy roadmap that tells me where am I trying, assesses my current state and tells me where I'm going to go so that I can start because right now it feels too big. And the biggest thing I say to anybody, I'm like, if you're trying to do anything with data, anything, what is the friction that your member has doing business with you? And oh my gosh, are those juicy? It can be as big and bold as, hey, blah, blah, blah. But many times it's something like, oh, it's check holds.
Hmm.
Ew. Our members hate check holds or check deposit or wait times. These are things that you already have data in your core that you can do. Now, if you want to get super crazy about it, grab your ACH.
Hmm.
Grab your ACH payments. And why? Because you're going to find who your competition is. You're going to find some key nuggets about spend that you can make some quick wins off of. And you don't have to buy any more tech, any more talent. You're trying to figure out what you can do with what you have right now so you can make really good decisions on what you need to purchase next. And by the way, you don't need to purchase a lot. Many times I just need to get a data visualization tool to be able to take the data I have out of my current systems so I can see it. That's really a big nugget, right? That goes way before I'm going to do um, a model or way before I'm going to get into the prediction and prescription. Let's just get us to understand and use what we have so we can do what? Turn it into action. If I can build that beautiful, just that gorgeous capability of saying, remember problem, data I can get to for it, take action, that's huge. That is huge. Because right now, as you said, Crayons are walking around this world going, I have tons of data, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's standing still, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah. Talk about the action part, Anne, because
Sure.
we've seen it. We see it with clients. I remember it when I was in the business. We've got a lot of data, but getting it down
Yeah.
to the people that can actually benefit from it, the ones that can use it, as you've just described, that's
Yeah.
oftentimes the challenge. What do you see there? What do you advise your clients on in that regard?
So much of this obviously has to do on a variety of different use cases, but let's just talk about one that's a super fun one. We're working with the credit union, and literally they had a really, shall we say, their NPS in their call center had a lot of opportunity for growth. Let's just positively phrase it that way. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So we realized that the call center is not just going to be the call center people, but it's going to be a variety of other people that play in the call center, right? Um, what are the different departments that are going through the call center? It's going to be cards, it's going to be marketing, operations, blah, blah. So we get these people in the room cross-functionally. This is the magic part. Let's think about the member experience. It's usually not one department. It's not marketing. It's going to be marketing technology, finance, marketing technology, loan product, right? Anyways, we get these people in the room, and first thing I ask is I say, all right, guys, let's just be super assumptive. Why do you think so many people are coming to call center and they're like, oh, it's account balances. That's all they want. Well, we are able to pull one big file out of the call center. And guess what? That's not even the top five.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not even the top five. You know what the number one thing is? They're like, I am trying to figure out card disputes. So the cards, so first of all, the poor member has no idea what a dispute is. They're like, something's wrong with my card. Like payment's not right. They want to
Mhm.
dispute a transaction, but that's not the word that the member uses. The member's like, ew, ew, that's what they say, or some other comment. So
Yeah.
they're going to the credit union, and the first thing they do is like, I'm going to call you. So they get the call center. So the call center is like, what's the problem? And they're trying to describe. They're like, oh, that's cards. Well, the member's already ticked off because there's something not quite right with their card situation, card purchasing behavior. So then by the time that they get through it, then they have to be handed off again. They're not jazzed. Then the second one is fraud. Hey, why was my card captured? Why was my card held? Well, guess what? Turns out when we unpack more data, we realize that the poor member has a landline that's still on the account, so that the credit union's calling the landline that doesn't exist anymore and not calling the cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
These are not life changing, oh my gosh, here we go. But these are actions that go across the credit union, right? So when you go to a credit union, you're like, hey, how quickly does it take you to find these really big issues and how can we solve them? Usually it's 3, 5 months. I got to get the data. Well, we work through a way of doing it very, very iteratively and very fast. We kind of take a chapter out of design thinking, which is how do I look at it from a member centric design, and then
Right.
also add on sprinting. And in 6 weeks, we were able to completely solve both of those problems. They have a whole new way of getting in from either the website or from the call tree to get you into cards. They have a whole new way of saying, hey, this is how you walk through it. But 6 weeks, using the data they have, making sure they have the people in the room to understand that full member experience, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that member is going to be coming in to the call center, is coming in for marketing, is coming in for cards in this particular scenario. So much about the people component and the action on it depends on how we look across the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And as
Yeah.
credit unions, by default, we sit there and we go, well, it's our gorgeous disciplinary silo, right? Like
Right.
all this
Right.
gorgeousness goes into marketing, all this gorgeousness goes into lending, and we forget to build that little bridge and be like, oh, hey, I see you. We need to kind of come
Mhm.
together. Right. But then there's also finance and pricing. There's collections. There's so much that goes along this operations. So when we think about action, when we see the data, then we can start building out those beautiful processes that say, oh, let's get in front of it. Let's document what we're doing. Let's make sure we have the data to support that we see change. Let's make sure we can measure that call center activity. And by the way, we saw that NPS go up. Ooh, ooh. Because what does that line back to? That line's all the way back to what the member experience is, their satisfaction, and then it goes back to, is the credit union able to deliver on its mission, and then obviously do what it needs to do to keep the lights on and the doors open.
And I would add to that that we talked earlier about member growth and the need for us to continue to grow and so forth. Well, we have to retain the existing members that we have. And what you just described, Anne, is retention, right? Because one
Yes.
bad experience will negate 99 positive experiences. So being able to focus
Oh,
on that helps with the member retention.
and you have to remember the member's environment right now, right? The member, and this is literally due to the pandemic, so everybody jumped up their technology expertise by like 7 years, is that they're all
Mhm.
like, I want it this way. I want this. If you can't give it to me this, then I will go and find it. And
Somebody
there's a
else will.
ton.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't realize that when they go to someplace else, there's going to be more fees. We see in the mortgage environment, more and more members are making payments to Rocket Mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because I can stand on a bus in really cruddy Wi-Fi and I can get a mortgage. I can get through the approval, right? But I don't realize that it's a really cruddy product. I don't realize that it's chock full of fees, and I don't realize that that's not something I need to be doing. So, is the credit union going to be able to get the technology to go after a rocket? No, but when they see a rocket, they can try to reacquire it. There's a whole reacquisition game in there because we can nail it on service. And yes, you don't want to be spending your time going, shoot, I wish I didn't have to reacquire you, but oh my gosh, the member wants to be reacquired. They really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Hey,
sure.
Bill.
And
I was going to say, Bill, that gets to something we've talked about before too, which is our competition. And it's not the credit union down the street. It's not the big bad bank. It's this guy here, right? And
Yeah.
that's our competition right now. So,
Actually, you know who our scary competition is? Is PayPal. Everybody is using PayPal. Everybody's using Amazon. And
hmm
PayPal does have loans.
yeah, they do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds, I think a lot of times when I talk to credit unions, they can identify some of the things that you talked about, that they're having a problem with this. They're having a problem with this. And they're basing that even on like what you just said. They're thinking, "Oh, our biggest problem is somebody's calling for this." But I don't think enough of them know how to fix it. I
Right.
think that their knowledge base could depend so much. Like some credit unions have really good people inside who might be a CIO who's really smart and really
Right.
understands how to make everything work. But then there's a lot of credit unions that don't have that expertise in house. So they're working on a service bureau relationship with a core processor who they're trying to do more with, but they're not getting the support, right? So,
Right.
and is that something that you help them with as well to try to identify again the gaps? What can be
Yeah.
fixed, the early wins? Because I think it seems like obviously with your depth of knowledge, I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to data. I'm a marketing guy, but I can identify real quickly some problems. As I mentioned, when I
Right.
see a loan app
Right.
that you cannot complete, you literally have got to print something out and take it
Yeah.
to a branch or scan it and send it back. It's pretty clear there's
Mm,
a problem. There's a problem there. So how do you
absolutely.
how do
Yeah.
you help that? So if I was a credit union coming to you, no matter what size I am, and I'm not sure the size of clients you work with, but let's say I'm coming to you and I'm saying, Ann, you know what? These are my challenges. How do you work with a credit union like that? What do you actually do?
Yeah. So the first thing, so we have three phases. The first phase is the discovery phase. And in that, I want to actually take your ACH data. I'm going to do it securely, and I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to show you from where your members are making payments elsewise, who your true actual competition is in your key revenue generating products. So mortgages, credit cards, and autos. I'm going to show you right away. Then I'm going to go in there, and based on your ACH, I'm going to also find out where's the spend. Who are the top retailers? Where's gas and groceries? What's going on in there? What are the school? How much are your members spending, if we can see it, on things like cell phone, cable? So I'll give you this beautiful part of data that says this is your data today. I just pulled ACH. This is what it is. I'm also going to do a survey piece, and that survey piece allows me to go to the entire organization and ask several questions around not how to use data, but what's the member's problem? What are the frictions? Help me identify some of those pieces that are assumed. What do you wish you offered? How do you innovate? It's about 20 questions. I take those two, and that becomes our discovery deck. Now, I could just stop there because I've already given you a whole bunch of quick wins. You can see acquisition, reacquisition. You can see some areas on some frictions. But then I take through, and then we go on and we activate. And activate is where we say, okay, two things need to happen. Number one, what are those use cases we're going to activate your data on right now? So now the credit union is going to learn how to take that data and turn it into gold. All right, we're going to take that. We're going to pick out I'm going to work with the credit union. They're going to select the use cases, the member frictions where we know we can get to data because I've already evaluated their tech stack and I know they can get there. And then we get the cross-functional teams and then we work through that and we actually say, okay, now you have a pathway. The final pace is going to be to accelerate. And now I'm going to show you how are you going to have a data-led data growth engine, right? What are you going to build right now? What are you going to need? What are the people, the talents, success metrics you need right now to continue to do more of this so that you can go on? There's one really magical piece in here that's so much fun, and that is I get credit unions to moonshot after they have that gorgeous discovery deck. And that deck's pretty hefty. It's around 59 pages because there's a lot of goodness in there, right? When they look at that, I say, okay, now, and this is so hard for credit unions, but I say, what do you wish you could do if you had all the money, if you could buy AWS, if you could buy Google, what would you do? Because that's going to be where you're going to show me how far you can vision. And I am pretty confident that I'm going to be able to build you out something along the technology that we have today, your capability of what you told me, because I've already understood who you are, maturity, where you need to go on that vision. And
Yeah.
that's how I work with credit unions.
Love
Yeah,
that.
no, that's very interesting. It's fascinating stuff, and I could see, Paul. I don't know about you, but I could see when Ann was talking about that type of insight would be so valuable, you know. But now here's another problem I see. So you just talked about all those exciting opportunities you identify. Now, how do we build the frequency with that member? Two ways, right? We're talking about here on the Sales and Marketing Podcast. So marketing can do automated things. They can set up journeys using email,
Yep.
using maybe
Yep.
some phone calls, you trigger. And Paul, now your people have to understand those opportunities and be able to visualize those opportunities. And it's not going to be through an Excel spreadsheet that they got to page through. It's a tool, right? It's a CRM. It's something they can look at those opportunities. So, Paul, right, it's combining again the marketing ability to create those messages and build frequency, and the people so they can do that as well.
So they can capitalize on it and capitalize on it and in the right way, right? There's a right way and a wrong way to leverage that data. And we've got to prepare our people now so that they can present it the right way in the future and really capitalize on those opportunities.
Well, let's talk about some of the easy ways that credit unions can use AI. So let's just jump to AI for a minute, okay? So now I know that I'm going to do a lending promo, right? So I need to make sure that my staff know how to, when somebody comes inquires via either my chatbot, through the phone, or in the branch, what to do. So I've got to have a narrative way to say, how do I do that? On average, a credit union probably has 300 to 500 scopes of work, right? Like those not scopes of work, but standard operating procedures, SOPs. So they're trying to figure out how to do that. Why don't we take chat, give it all of that, and say, all right, in natural language, how do I open a check? How do I do this? How do I do that? And then it pulls on the accurate one that we want, and allows me to say, oh, that's right, that's what I do. That alone. Now now here's the key point. You've got to make sure when you feed that beautiful chatbot, when you feed it its natural language, you've got to have to make sure your documentation is clean. That's going to make a credit union say, okay, let me start. And if you just even take, like you said, the lending experience, let's walk through what are all those pieces. Let's make sure that that's clean. Then now my staff has a way to do that. So we can use some current state technology to allow us to have natural language to say, how do I do this quickly? And how do I give the service back up? Let me give you another example. In the call center, you can easily say, because especially when the member puts in their member number, you can have all that whole history that serves right up and says, oh my gosh, this member is in front of me. So when they call, you might even know the resolution that they're calling for. That's amazing. But you may not be like, hey, said member, happy you're here, blah, blah, blah. Oh, did you know we can give you more money in your wallet because we can
Right.
do a refi on set or whatever. But all that scripting, to your point, has to have a training component, and those people have to know that this is when I use it and how to follow up. And that's got to be accountability and good procedure.
And a clear distinction, Ann, that we have to make is what you just described is personalizing the offer to the member. It's
Yeah.
not, would you
Yeah.
like fries with that? And that's what
No.
traditionally we have done in our industry. That's not what we're talking about, folks. We're talking about
No.
personalizing it based on what the data is telling me and what the AI is scripting for me, right?
And that all comes from good data. I've got to be able to
Yeah.
give some good stuff to that. And even if I'm doing in small applications, I've got to make sure I can go back and constantly say that that data source, whether it's documentation or an actual data file, is clean. That's your
Yeah.
data governance, and that has to be happening. And that's why you need to have your data organized and sorted and know what you're using it for. And you're not going to take all your data. It's not like all of a sudden you wrap a cape around the credit union. You're like, boom, you all know what to do with your data. It's all around, let's take these small, and you heard me say this before, nuggetable. Let's take these nuggetable use cases and let's figure out how do we understand and build out processes because we're going to add on to it. It's iterative. You're going to be building this up. You're not going to start off and be like, all of a sudden I'm ready to run a marathon. You're like, no, no, no. You're going to get up and put on your comfy shoes and go get the mail. That's the first thing
Yeah.
we're going to go do.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I noticed that having worked with credit unions for a long time, as you have and as Paul has, that when you go in as a consultant working with a credit union, no matter what your expertise is, you've been around everything enough that you kind of get the big picture and you see
Right.
things clearly. Like you could see some missing pieces right away. Like I just came back from a 2-day meeting with a credit union and learning more about them. And I could identify pieces like while I was in that room, we got some
Mhm.
problems, guys, here. This is a problem. So,
Yeah.
and I'll go back with those recommendations, but it's funny how sometimes I think credit unions get so close and they're so caught up in their
Yeah.
day-to-day operations and people, they're not really looking at those obstacles that are in the way, and they have to fix them because I keep saying this, as you know, we're going to see more change happen in the next 5 years because of AI than we've seen in the last 50 years, right? I just read an article on that, which I happen to agree 100% with. So it's now or never for a lot of credit unions. I really, don't you think, Ann? It's now or never.
I think two things. I think number one, when we think about, the business model, right? You traditionally an industry comes in and they start off high and they get to the top of that beautiful bell curve and they're like, I'm riding high. They have eventually they're going to go down the side. There's going to be consolidation in the marketplace, and they have two options. They can either kind of repivot and go up to the next challenge, or they die. Okay. That's
Yeah.
just the natural life cycle of business, right? We're in consolidation. So we are exactly have this moment to figure out what we're going to do. Secondly, oh my goodness, what happens if credit unions don't exist? We don't have, whew, let's not talk about that. That's a little dark. Okay. So let's talk
Yeah.
about the good stuff, right? So we as an industry are the one place that has the members financial back, and I know right now there's a lot that's going on in the world that makes us a little uncertain. Credit unions can be that voice of certainty in an uncertain world. That doesn't mean they're going to make it all better, but they can say, hey, look, we found out that you're using buy now pay later to to buy that bagel, and we can help you out with that. Or hey, we see that you're trying to finance a new dishwasher and it's going to cost you twice as much. Let's figure out how we can put some money away for you to do that. We see you're trying to retire early. We see that you're trying to get, your kids up to college. We see that you're trying to get out of payday lending. We see
Mhm.
all of this, and that's why we need to rank our data, grab what we can do with what we have, and not stand still anymore, because that's going to be obsolescence, and move into, we
Yeah.
know our members need us and we've got to do
Yeah.
it now.
Yeah, and we have a few more minutes, and then we're going to have to wrap this up. But Ann, I would really love to have you back again. This is great, and you've got me thinking about 100 things here. And
Good.
seriously, so I'd really like to do that. One interesting. Paul and I were talking about some of the content we're going to do in some of our upcoming podcasts, and it's funny because we led right into what we were going to talk about in one of our upcoming, which is financial literacy. It's
Good.
about education. And I always say
Yes.
this, people aren't always ready sometimes to do the loan yet. They may be thinking about the thing they need to do, but that we have to build this path of opportunity for them, call to actions to educate them, to help them, to build frequency, to build trust, to build brand. And all of those foundations, when they're in place, can really make a difference in a rate is a rate, a fee is a fee.
Right.
But what's really a game changer is when they see you care about them. And Paul, you just mentioned when they know it's personalized for me and they know that I'm out there for their good. And I think now if we can create those smooth on transitions between those, we're going to deepen relationships. We're going to grow as an institution. When, it's not about rates and fees. It can't
No,
be.
no.
So
And I think members will give a little bit up in technology if they can make it up
Agree.
with financial relationship. Not
Right.
a lot, but they'll give you a tiny win if they're like, "Oh wait, you do have my back."
Mhm.
I would, like, for example, in 2008 when we had the great mortgage crisis,
Right.
members could call up and talk to sometimes the CEO and be like, "This is my situation." And the CEO can bring in your chief lending officer and you can actually do a modification. not a lot of people know that you can do a loan modification, a mortgage modification. But if you were at a credit union, you could.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
that's a great point.
if we don't do those things, nobody else is going to do them, right? Nobody else is going to step up and fill the gap. So
Yeah, for
great,
sure.
great stuff, Ann.
Absolutely. My absolute pleasure. This has been such a joy. I'm so glad we were able to make this work.
Yeah, me too. And I do want to have you back because you've got me thinking about a ton of different things. And Anne, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Please reach me out at Anne, and that is, I am British, so there's an E on the last of my name. So it's Anne, A-N-N-E, at, ready? Anne Legg, A-N-N-E, right? Legg, thrive.com. Reach out. You will also find anything you need to know about AnneLeggThrive.com itself. So either email me, check out the website. You can get a hold of me on the website. Best way to get a hold of me.
Yeah, and I did a search and you came up really easy too when I was looking. I just put in Anne Legg, Thrive.
Boom.
And
Yeah.
boom, it was right there. So it's good.
Good.
I know you have a book too, which I've seen and read some of it. It's actually very good as well. So there's a lot out there.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for your time today. This was really a pleasure. And we are going to have you back sometime soon.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you
All right,
for
have a great
introducing
day.
us to the word nuggetable. I appreciate that.
Nuggetable. Nuggetable. It's a thing.
Love it. Yes.
Nuggetable's a thing.
Yeah. Very,
Thanks,
really
Ann.
awesome.
All
This is
right.
awesome. Thanks, you guys. All
Take
right.
care.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.